Have you been looking for a cell activator recipe that just works? Have you had no luck getting your hands on Floetrol? Or perhaps you don't want to use Minwax Freestain, or it's too expensive to get Australian Floetrol? I have something for you. Let's check this out. Hey guys, it's G. Today I'm talking to you about a new cell activator recipe that is especially good for people who can't get their hands on Australian Floetrol, or maybe can't get their hands on American Floetrol either, or perhaps you don't want to use Minwax Freestain for whatever reason, and there are many, but I have a new recipe that is a sort of twist on an existing one that I am getting good results with and I want to share with you. So let's switch over to my work desk and let's see how this is done. To help build this recipe, I'm going to need to make sure that there are some constants. For the base, I'm going to use flat white house paint. I know you shouldn't use matte, but it'll work for the demonstration. Then we've got a violet color and a yellow ochre. And we'll go on top of that with the crimson red. And we'll see how that does. Now, the term cell activator was created by Shelley Caruthers in Australia with her bloom technique. And it's a term that's often confused with the generic term for a cell in acrylic pouring. They are distinct in that a recipe for a cell activator is a specific recipe, and nowadays there are quite a few. But back then, that was the only way. Back when it was just the Australian Floetrol, that was the only way to get your hands on a paint mixture that would create that effect. Nowadays, there's been a few recipes, and if you have seen my videos, you know I've made quite a few cell activator recipes. And one of the things that people constantly have a problem with is getting their hands on Floetrol. Even the people who are in the States, because getting Australian Floetrol is very expensive. So, to account for that, because I've run out of Floetrol, and I've never had Australian Floetrol either, I decided to work with the recipes that were around, and kind of fiddle with them until I made something that I first was my own and would be accessible to as many people as possible. And now we can talk about the cell activator. But before I do, I'd like to remind you all that the recommended products that I use are all available on my Amazon shopping list. That link for that will be below in the description. I will make a small commission of any purchases you make from Amazon for 24 hours after you click that link. So remember me when you're doing your shopping. I'd greatly appreciate that. So for the cell activator recipe, the first ingredient I want to talk about is PVA glue. Now, I know some of you may have seen the glue-only recipe for the cell activator, and I've tried that before, and while it does work, it does have a few flaws. Namely that PVA glue, while a decent entry-level pouring medium, PVA glue really has no business being in a painting, honestly. PVA glue is non-archival, PVA glue cracks very easily. There's a host of problems about PVA glue, and I could just do a video on that later. But for the purpose of cell activator, I have matched it with another ingredient that has eliminated the problem which I usually have when using glue, which is flocculation. When you see the pigment break apart and it looks like little bits of dirt in the painting. And it's really unpleasant, it doesn't look nice, it's hard to fix. So PVA glue is the kind of white glue that you use in schools. It is not clear glue, it is not carpenter's glue, it is not the yellow type of glue that's used on wood. It is the stuff that you use in school, not the stick, the liquid stuff that you would apply with a stick, that you would apply with a wooden stick. So, ingredient number 2 that you can use is gloss varnish. And the thing about gloss varnish is it's also not the same everywhere in the world. In the Western world, you have very runny, watered down varnishes, whereas here in Egypt, we have varnishes that are as thick as house paint. And because of that, because they're meant for latex paint and they're applied with a roller, we don't actually spray paint our latex paint, which is why we don't have floetrol and why our varnish is like this. So I'm adding water to my varnish, and this experiment is actually being run in 4 places around the world. Christy is doing it in the US, Bridget is doing it in Canada, Dan is doing it in Australia, and we're all trying it with different varnishes, with different glues, and with different paints. And while I don't have the results right now, while I'm narrating this, I will have the results by the time I'm editing. So I will have a playback with some photos with the results and their recipes, their respective recipes. So now we have glue and varnish. Let me show you how much glue I'm talking about here, because this is also really important. You really don't want to overdo PVA glue. You need just enough, and what I mean by just enough is less than the paint. So a good measure I go by is half the amount of paint is how much glue I put. So let me just actually scoop some out on the pellet knife and show you. About this much, not really a huge amount, as you can see. I'm just gonna add this to my cup. This glue is getting a little old and I have some solids on the palette knife. I'm just gonna get rid of that. Okay. So what I'm doing here is about 2 parts paint, 1 part glue, and varnish part is the tricky part because we're trying to avoid using water, honestly. So in my case I have to, but I'm gonna say you'll want about 2 to 3 parts varnish just to make the cell activator the right consistency. And since we're here and we're talking about consistency, I've actually just made a video that explains the consistency of the most common techniques, and this includes a cell activator regardless of the recipe, because most recipes get them to around the same consistency. It's just a matter of knowing what consistencies your materials are. So before we begin with the demonstration, I'd like to remind you that a lot of my paintings are available on my Etsy, and it's free shipping everywhere in the world, so you might want to get in on that. The link is also in the description. So without further ado, let's demonstrate this. So here's the order I'm going with this now. I'm gonna go house paint, yellow ochre, a little bit of the red from earlier, since it obviously doesn't work as a cell activator, might as well be used as a color. Purple. These are all opaque colors, actually. So I've been thinking of starting a live stream to go on Saturday with Sai, and we can have you guys for, I don't know, 3 to 4 hours between us. Let me know what you'd like to see. We're thinking about having a Q&A. One of the most requested questions we get is about layering and using paint opacity, so we could definitely talk about that. I've been working on portraits, and I don't know if you'd want to see quick tutorials on portraits, or maybe we make a quick one or maybe we make a quick one together in like an hour and a half. Do let me know in the comments. And most importantly, if this recipe works out for you, do me a huge solid and share it with your acrylic pouring friends, because that would really help out my channel. Okay, without further ado, I'd actually like to point you to the very thin halo you're seeing around here, which is, as anyone who blooms would know, this is a sign of good things that come. So let's do the blowout. One of these days I'll get those Lisa Marvin blowout skills. It doesn't seem like that days today. I've got a lot of solids in the paint, man. There we go. So let's quickly look at this reaction right here. Hopefully without warping it too much as I tilt it. See? Nice crisp cells. If I had a straw, I'd go in for those solid bits, but overall, like, these are nice. They're not bleeding. Yeah, I kind of wish I did this with the spinner. I'm being really creative with this. Just trying to break the surface tension a little. You know what we could do? We could actually see what happens if we swipe it. This is a CA after all. So I've loaded up the palette knife, CA first, and then the red paint. I'm just gonna see, cells will start to pop up. It is on the thicker side, but I like thick CA recipes because they make, they minimize the blending. They make for nice crisp lines. This is the best we're gonna get out of it. Give it a quick torch. And there you go. Now, is that a cell activator or what? Nice crisp lines, no float roll, no Minox, no problems. We didn't even have to use an oil. It's all water-based products. Won't give you any trouble when you resin. Just swipe it with alcohol to make sure there's no dust, and you're good to go. Don't forget to share this video. Do me a huge favor. Help me hit the monetization threshold. I'm only a couple 100 hours away. And yeah, this was G. See you in the next video.